This is the final analysis example of for the Prelude from the Well-Tempered Clavier by Bach. So we've done it on staff lines, treble and bass clef. Now we do it on plain paper. Okay, now the first thing is that you start off with a tonic. Okay, and that tonic is major. And on the lowermost note you got the root. On the uppermost note you got the major third. Is there anything more than you need there? Unless you need to know that it's a C major, but I think that that's not a real problem. Okay, a bar line. The next one goes to a supertonic. Let's get that. Let's do it at least reasonable. It's a supertonic. Okay. Now the supertonic has the minor third on top. It is minor. You got the minor third up there. The lowermost note is the minor seventh. And the minor seventh and the minor third creates the minor. The minorness of the chord. Okay, let me get this closed here so I can be a little bit more comfortable in writing this. Okay. There we go. Now you can put this 4 bars, or really not necessary, but it's okay. If you need more information here, fine, but I want this learned. I don't mean learned in terms of, oh, I can do it or something like that. I mean memorized, learned. So there's a difference between just simply memorized without any understanding at all, and there's the other one is it's learned and it's memorized. If this isn't memorized, what's the use? You've gone to a lot of trouble here and of little use. Okay, the next one is going to be a dominant. Okay, and then the dominant, you've got a minor seventh on top. Now don't forget, your dominant is probably going to have the major third and the minor seventh. So that minor seventh on top tells you a little bit about that. Okay, and let's label that as dominant. If we're wrong, we can always erase it. Okay, what's the lowermost note? The lowermost note is a major third. And the major third and the minor seventh creates a tritone, of which B to G, B to F. F is your, now if you want to make a note of that, F is your uppermost note. And B of the G major is B, the lowermost note. Now B to F. Again, B to F sharp would be a normal fifth. This is a diminished fifth. Put whatever information on this, sort of a lead sheet here that you're working with. Okay, and the next one is right back to the tonic, so we know all about that. That it is major, and the root's on the bottom, and the major thirds on top. Be right back home, so it's sort of like a circle here. 1, 2, 5, 1. Very, very basic. Let's go ahead here. So there's four majors. Now let's do the next one. All right, we got a 6 chord here. Submediant. By the way, the key is the key of the piece is what we can call the key of the tonic. And C major. Okay, that takes care of most everything that we need to know about this. Okay, we've got now the submediate chord here. It is minor. You've got 6 is normally minor, by the way, in a major key. 2 is minor in a normally minor. If you see any accidentals, these will reflect that. So let me put a note over here for you. 2, 3, 6 are minor normally. And that's without any accidentals to change it from the basic key that you're in. Now those are triads or seventh chords, or as I'm trying to see if I can convince myself, triads and quadrads. Anyway, there you have that, and then your 5 is major as a triad and is dominant as a quadrad. So it's either major or it's dominant. This is a major GBD. This is a dominant seventh, if you like. But I don't like that dominant seventh because sevenths start talking about function. And with these designations here, these like what we're doing here, those are things that tell you what it is. They're their identity, the identifiers. And this is an identifier of the dominant seventh if you want. But it's a dominant, and the dominant will take care of it. You've got 2 definitions of the dominant. One is the 5th note of any scale, and the other definition is a 7th chord or a quadrad made up of characteristic intervals within the tritone, which is the major 3rd and the minor 7th. Okay, 2, 3, and 1 is major. 1 and 4 are major. And 7 is diminished as a triad, GBD, for example, and GBDF is like a 7th chord then. So it's a triad, and it's now GBD, excuse me, BDFA is not a diminished 7th chord. BDF is a diminished triad. BDFA, F to A is a major 3rd. So you have a diminished triad and a major 3rd on top, or a major triad and then a minor 7th. So that's a half diminished. So there's your lineup of the chords. And I may, if somebody has real questions about all this information here, I can do a video on that. But I think that most of the time people will have enough knowledge, especially if they're teachers, whether they're teachers just of children and young adults or whether they're artist teachers, will know most of this. If somebody doesn't, fine, I'll take care of it. Okay, coming back, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's draw a bar line here, finishing up that 4th measure, going on to the 5th measure. That's an A minor. So this the 6th chord is minor, and the lowermost note of that minor chord is the minor 3rd, C. And it's that minor 3rd that is characteristic interval of the minor chord, of the chord itself. Now you don't have a C, E, G in there, so it's not a 7th chord. It's a triad. So there's no 7th. The uppermost note of the A minor chord is the root. Continuing on here, 6 goes to 2. Now that's all part of the key circle, or shall we say just the circle. Now we've got three different types of circles. We've got the full circle, which goes from C to C, or from 1 right around back to 1. The C to C would be the full circle. Then we got the diatonic circle, which takes a diagonal from 4 to 7, as in the Roman numeral circle. Because we go to 4 to flat 7, which is a fifth or a fourth, depending upon whether you're going up or down, that's going outside the key. So you want to skip all the chords that have, or notes that have flats in them, and go from, as I say, a diagonal from that, in the key of C. You go C over to F, then you take that diagonal from F right down across to 7. Then 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 would be the rest there. And then you skip all of the ones that have any sharps or flats in the note as you go around the circle. So going that diagonal, excuse me, that is the diatonic circle. In other words, keeping within the scale. And the upper note there could be any note at all within the whole gamut of notes within the scale or within the key. In other words, you could start with G up there, G over to F sharp, and then take that diagonal down. Or you could start off with F or G flat at the very top. Normally we put G flat at the very bottom. So you got the full circle, you've got the diatonic circle, then you have the Roman numeral circle, and there's a video on those three circles that would be very good to review. Okay, supertonic. Now on the supertonic, you've got an accidental there, that F sharp. So this is going to be a dominant on the supertonic. Now this is the value of doing this. You're separating the function of the chords from the identity of the chords with their identifiers. That's minor. And if it's just a minor third, you know it's a triad. If it's got a minor seventh, you know it's a minor seventh chord. This is dominant. It has a tritone in it. Now, what's the tritone? Well, first of all, let's see what's the uppermost note. Well, that's the root, D. Now, if you want to write what these notes are, but I don't think it's necessary, because the one note above C is D, so not a big deal. Now then, your tritone is your F sharp in the treble and C, which is the minor seventh on the bottom. So your minor seventh on the lower part then constitute the dominant. Now, you don't have from here to here as the characteristic intervals like you did over here on this dominant. You had the major third, the minor seventh. Here you've only got the minor seventh. So within this chord here, you're also going to have the major third within it. And then your major third and your minor seventh make up the, well, what would it be then? Well, C to F sharp, C to F is normal, C to F sharp is an augmented fourth. So it's an augmented fourth, which is your tritone. Okay, I think that's about it. We put the major, we got the lowermost, we got the uppermost, and then we've got one of the intervals in between there, which will be the major third. And by the way, if you want to put that in there as a parenthesis, F sharp. Okay. Going ahead to the next measure, you've got a G major chord, GBD. I think that's sort of easy to see by this time, huh? So that's a 5. The upper note, let's do that a little bit better. Okay, a 5. The uppermost note of that is the root. And the lowermost note will be, and it's major by the way, there's no seventh in here, so the major third. So the major third determines this as a triad. you don't have a seventh chord, so you can't call it a dominant X. So the difference between a major triad and a dominant is simply the difference between M for major and X for dominant. You don't need to include sevens here or anything else. You do need to have the major third here, of course. But if you don't have a minor seventh, it's not a dominant. But it's on the it's built upon the fifth note of the scale. So with that definition, it is the dominant. I think that's about it. You got the major third on the bottom, which determines its identity, and you got the root on top. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Let's do a fourth one here. Now, 5 goes to 1, and that's just key circle. Everything here is basically key circle, as you notice. Obviously, Bach worked with the key circle to a great extent, but he used different inversions meaning other than roots on the bottom, and different positions. You know, what's the uppermost note, and he couched these in different forms. So we weren't completely aware of the roots going 1 up to 4 or down to 5, as would be normal key circle. We're not aware of it. So he's worked this out so you're aware of the music, not of the technicalities of for example, the key circle. Okay, 1, it's major. Your uppermost note is the root, and your lowermost note is, this major seventh. Now here we have the major seventh, which is fine. We know it's going to be a seventh chord, but we should really indicate here the major third. This is simply the designation of the whole chord as being major. So here we've got the major third, which is B. So that major third and the minor and the major seventh makes it into a major quadrad or major seventh chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, that takes care of that much. Going on to the next one, the next 4 roots is going to be back to well, let's see, what do we have here? We've got A is your lowermost note, A, C, E, G. It's going to be a 6th chord. Okay, a submediant. By the way, if you're not completely comfortable with these terms, supertonic, submediant, mediate, and so on, I have the video on there which will explain the whole thing, how it's built. That will make it rather simple for you. So be sure you check that out. Okay, minor, A minor, your root's on the bottom. So it's a minor. Remember over here, 2, 3, and 6 are minor. Okay, so minor. What's the lowermost note? Well, the lowermost note is the root. And that is A, which is the 6th note of the C major scale. Therefore, it's the submediant note. Therefore, the submediant chord. The uppermost note of this submediant chord is the minor third. Okay, again here, the minor third being the top part, you can put a parenthesis here, AC is the minor third. And that is the uppermost note, with the lowermost note being the root. So you got the minor third, which is the characteristic interval of this C chord, which makes it minor, and your root is there. Okay, on to the second chord in this group. You've got a D, and it's going to be a dominant. You've got, and it is on the supertonic. Oh boy, this is where all of your theorists fall apart. Okay, it's a dominant. D, F sharp, A, C. Your lowermost note, now we're going to put dominant. If we're wrong, we can always erase it. but your lowermost note is D. Yeah. Let's not put that in right now. Let's just put in, it's the root. Then if you want to put in here that it is D, the root is D. Therefore, D is the second note of the C major scale. Therefore, it's a supertonic chord. What is the uppermost note? That's C, which is the minor seventh. D, F sharp, A, C. Always put this line so we know what goes above and so on. So you've got the minor seventh. That's good. Now you got the root down here, D, but you've got to put in here that you do have a major third. And that major third is F sharp. Now your major third and your minor seventh make up that dominant. Okay, you following me okay here? Okay. Now draw a nice bar line, freehand. What comes after the supertonic? Normally the dominant. Well, okay, that's on G, so that's the dominant. And your chord, it is major, doesn't have the seventh in it, so that's major. And your lowermost note is the root of that G major triad. The uppermost note of this dominant is the major third. GB is the major third. The root is, of course, the fifth note of the C major scale, which is G. I don't think you need to write that in. Here was a good idea because you want to stick with that D as being the supertonic because this has got that F sharp. And as I explained in the videos on this, theorists have no idea how to handle this. Because number one, they don't have an identifier for the dominant, and they don't have a second definition for the word dominant. Therefore, they call this a 5-7 of 5, you know, where 5-7 is the identifier of the dominant, and 5 of 4 in this case. What is it? Now, wait a minute. That would be 5 of 5? Yes, it is 5 of 5, which then 5, that dominant, becomes tonicized into a tonic. So the supertonic D goes to G, which is the dominant, but that's tonicized, so then you got the 5-1. Well, that's the relationship of them, but it just makes no sense to have this called a secondary dominant simply because it's not on the fifth note of the scale. It's on the second note of the scale. Okay, 5 should go to 1, right? All right, what do we have here? Well, we don't have. We've got something entirely different on this particular chord, and you've got to put it here as some kind of an explanation of what's going on in your sort of lead sheet here. All right, you've got a tritone, the G to the C sharp. So put it over here because you're going to put the basic stuff here. So G to C sharp, is that correct? Yeah, G to C sharp. Now G to C normally is a fourth. G to C sharp is an augmented fourth. And that's your tritone. Now that yields, shall we say, the root of the dominant this is going to be. So it's going to be a dominant, but it's going to be without a root. So you got to put that little circle there indicating without a root. I would suggest if you put this over here, it's going to mean diminished somehow, somewhere around over here. But anyway, let's not worry about that. Now then here, you've got the dominant without a root. You got a G to C sharp. Now then, C sharp will be the major third of A. And G is the minor seventh. So this is the major third. This is the minor seventh. Now, the major third is C sharp, the minor seventh is G, and what's the root? Well, C sharp is the third of A. So the root is equal to is A. That's the missing root. It's not there in the music, obviously. Okay? But you have to take it into account. Now, A is what position does A hold in the C major scale? Well, the submediant. Okay? Now then, what's the uppermost note of this submediant chord with the A being the missing root? Well, that's your C sharp. And we already indicated that is the major third. Okay? Now, what's the lowermost note of this dominant without a root? All right, the lowermost note is a G. Now, G, what's the relationship of G to A? Well, here we have it right here. Where is it? No, that's not it. Yes, it is. So we had G to A and the G to C sharp in the treble. Then the G is doubled down below as the major third. No, the minor seventh, excuse me. G is the minor seventh, C sharp is the major third. So G is the minor seventh, and that is, again, G. So now we've got the minor seventh and the major third up here. And that is your tritone that is over here. Whew! It's a bit of a job taking a look at that. Now that has to be thoroughly understood as to what's happening there. You've got one more little thing there. Now we've got the G as the minor seventh, C sharp is the major third. E is what? A, C sharp, E is the fifth. B flat. All right, if A is the root, then B flat is the minor seventh. Excuse me, minor ninth. So B flat is the minor ninth. Well, there you have it. Nothing more to say about that. Okay, the next measure, okay, I think this is down about measure 13, yeah. Okay, it's going to be a supertonic triad built upon D. Well, your chord is DFA. That's it, you don't have a C in there. So it's just a supertonic chord. And supertonic, as I mentioned up here, is the 2, 3, and 6 are all minor. So this is normal, so it's going to be minor. Okay. Okay, now the uppermost note of this supertonic triad is D, the root. What is the lowermost note in this D minor chord? Well, D, F. F and A are the minor third and the fifth. So the minor third. And this minor third is the characteristic interval of this minor triad. Let's get this over here, I'm sorry. You got a supertonic because it's the D, and the D is the uppermost note. It's a minor triad. There we go. Okay. It's a minor chord because the lowermost note is a minor third, and that is the characteristic interval of the minor triad, which that's its designation. Is there any other information you need there? If you want to put in the D as doubled, you got an A as the fifth, all that stuff, fine. Put in whatever information you want here, like I've done it over here. All this information here on this submediant chord. All right, now we go on to the next one. And we got another problematic chord here. Again, you see that the F to B is a tritone. Well, I'm going to put it over here. Okay, F to B. Now, what's the normal interval? F to B flat, of course. That's the major scale, F, G, A, B flat, and so on. So F to B is making it larger from B flat up to B. So this is an augmented fourth. So it's an augmented fourth. And an augmented fourth is the tritone. Now, in this particular chord here, you're going to have F to B, and B is the major third, and F is the minor seventh. Okay, so F to B and so on. What is the root of that tritone? What is, now B is the major third of what? You know, it's almost like algebra or some mathematical problem. B is the major third, B, A, G. So the root, then, the missing root is G. So you don't find a G in that whole chord there because it's missing. Okay, because none of those notes can be a root. It's just not possible. Doesn't work out logically. This does. So the root is G. It's dominant because you do have that tritone, and you've got the minor seventh and the major third. And it's dominant, and what do you have? Now, wait a minute. That's its identifier. It's a 5 chord. Because G as a root is 5. So we get 2 to 5. Perfect. It makes sense. It makes perfect logical sense here. So G is 5 is the missing root, G. Okay, what's on the uppermost note of this chord? Okay, the uppermost note, G to B, is the major thirds on top. The B. And that, as we have down here, B is the major third of the chord. It's dominant. Okay, see, that's the identifier. Minor was the identifier here. The minor third was the characteristic interval. We got the symbol that indicates the dominant. What's the lowermost note? Okay, now the lowermost note is an F. Well, in terms of the G dominant chord, F then is the minor seventh. And that is F. Now F is the minor seventh, as we've indicated over here in our tritone. Okay, we've got the minor seventh. We don't have a major third. Is the major third present here? Well, yes, of course. Right up here, the B. The major third, B. So you got the major third, the minor seventh, and let's see now. F to B. F in the F major scale, we explained that over here, the augmented fourth. So it's a tritone. So you've got all the information here. Then whatever notes you need to fill in here. But G is the missing root. And that's a chord built upon that missing root. You got one more note there that's not explained here, and that's that A flat. Well, if G is the root, A flat's the minor ninth. So A flat is the minor ninth. And if you've gone through the other videos carefully, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about here. Well, okay, I don't think there's anything to be said there. So you got this missing root here, and 6 goes to 2, 2 goes to 5, and 5 goes to what? Would you guess it? It's tonic, you know, C-E-G. Take a look at your music. It is C-E-G. You got this in the treble, you got the C, you got the G, in the bass you got the E and the G. So C-E-G, it's major. What's the uppermost note of this tonic triad? The root, C. What's the lowermost note of this triad? That's E, the major third. And it is this characteristic interval that gives the triad its designation as a major triad. You don't have 7 in here, so it's not a 7th, it's a triad. So 1, 2, 3. Ooh, let's see if we can squeeze in now the next chord here. All right, now, as you can see, you've got on the lowermost note in the bass clef, you got 2 notes together. The upper note will probably be the root, which is F. F is the 4th note of the scale, so it's a subdominant. 4. Okay, and that is F. If you need to make a note of that, you can certainly do it. What is the top note of this F major 7, by the way? Well, that's the root up there on top. And it is a major 7 chord. Okay, what's the lowermost note? Well, that's the F, is the major 7th. It's most important to get that major 7th in there because a major 7th is down is a half step below the root of F. F down to E is the major 7th. You can make a note of that. E is a half step below F. So it's the major 7th. E flat would be the minor 7th, which would be part of the dominant. So you got E here. So you got everything here. You got a major, it's a 7th chord because you got the major 7th here, or a quadrat if you wish, because you've got to have, it's a quadrat because of the 7. 1, 3, 5 is a triad. 1, 3, 5, 7 is a quadrat or a 7th chord. And we can draw a bar line here, and that's finished those 4 notes. Okay, going ahead here to the next one. Now, 4 goes down a minor 3rd to the supertonic. That's not key circle, obviously. Okay, so we go on to a 2 chord here. Okay, a 2 chord is going to be minor. That's according to our 2, 3, and 6 are minor when normal. We don't see any accidentals here on this 2 chord, so it's minor. Normal. Okay, the uppermost note. Now it's a D minor chord, either triad or quadrat, 7th chord. So what's the uppermost note? Well, that's F. Well, F with a D root is a minor 3rd, is the uppermost note. That's the minor 3rd. D, F, A. Now your chord in the right hand looks like an F major triad, F, A, C. The only problem is you've got the left hand, which is D and F. So D, F, A, C. So D is the root, not F. So F is the minor 3rd. D, as the lowermost note, is the root. These things you must be able to take into account, because if you call this an F major, you're going to mess up your brain. You know, it's not going to sound according to what you expect it to sound. It's just going to be really going to be a misery. So what do we have here? We got the major 3rd. Do we have a major 7th in there? Well, D, F, A, C, we sure do. We've got the minor 7th, which is C. So we got the minor 7th and the minor 3rd, which makes a minor quadrat or a minor 7th chord. The root's on the bottom, the minor 3rd's on the top. This is essential information. Okay. Now, going ahead here to the dominant. Well, 2 goes to 5, okay. See, everything is so normal, except once in a while you get this 1 going to a 6. Or a 4 going to a 2, excuse me, in this particular case. A 4 going to a 2. That's not key circle, that's just going down a minor 3rd. Okay, a 5 chord here. Well, that's very easy. It's a dominant. Why is it a dominant? Because right on top there you got a B and an F. Okay, your B major scale has 5 sharps, of which F is the first one, F sharp. So B to F sharp is normal. B to F natural, there's no natural sign there, but it is a F natural, so B to F is a diminished 5th. So we'll make a note here that B to F, B to F, is a diminished fifth. Diminished fifth. And that is your tritone. Okay. Now your root here is going to be G. The basic note. Is the root on the bottom? It sure is. Okay. The root. What's your uppermost note? The F. Okay, and the F is the minor seventh. The B is going to be the major third, and the F is the minor seventh. So this, the upper note is F. Therefore, it is the major third. Hold on, it's the minor seventh. Have I got that right here? F is the minor seventh. I sure do. Oh, okay, the minor seventh, which is F again. Okay. Now, where's the major third? Well, the major third is part of that tritone here, and the major third is B. So somewhere around here, you're going to have the B is the major third, B. Put this information however you want to organize it. That's the second measure. The next one is 5 goes to 1, basic progression, and it is major as an identity, and that's the identifier. On top of this one is the major third E. If you know that, you don't need any other designation. If you don't, you can put in any information you want here. 1, 2, 3, we're done with that. And the next one has an accidental in it also. All right, now, it's a tonic also. This was a major. This is going to be a dominant. Now, you're familiar with this from the written portion on a staff paper, treble and bass clef. So now it's a dominant. What's your uppermost note in this dominant? Well, that's the major third. Okay, we got that major. Over here, major third still. So we got the major third in the previous chord, and we still keep the major third. Now then, we got the major third. Then your minor seventh. Minor seventh is B flat. So the minor seventh to the major third again is what? B flat to E. B flat to E flat's normal, so B flat to E is an augmented fourth. So we have an augmented fourth here, which is your tritone. Okay. The lowermost note of this chord is your tonic, which is the root. Tonic root. Okay. And the next chord after that and that covers one page. Why don't we do the next page? Just flip this over. Okay. Okay, this is the 21st measure, 21. Okay, you start off with F major, which is 4. Okay, the bottommost note is, now by the way, 4 is going to be major, because remember 1 and 4 in a major key is major, and 5 as a triad is major. So you got 1, 4, and 5 are all three major. If 5 has that minor seventh in it, it's no longer major, it's dominant. And the identifying symbol for that is X. So when 4 here and it's major, the lowermost note is your root, F. So 4 chord F, it's major. Okay. What's your uppermost note? Uppermost note, F-A-C-E, is the major seventh, which now qualifies this as either, if you want to call it a major seventh or a major quadrant. It's got 4 notes to it, F, A, C, E. So if you want to make a note of that, E is being the seventh of this chord. F, A, C. A is the major third. If you want to put that in there, A, major third. So you got the major third, the major seventh. It's a major seventh or major quadrant. Okay, that's that first 21st measure. The next one, aha, we've got a whole bunch of accidentals here. Now, immediately on that left hand, you've got an F sharp to C. F to C is a normal fifth. F sharp to C is a half step smaller, so it's a diminished fifth. So let's put that over here as some information. The diminished fifth is F sharp to C, which then is your tritone. Now, the diminished fifth in this chord, the upper note of this diminished fifth, the C, is the minor seventh. So, we can say now, where will we put this? All right, the minor seventh of this tritone is C, and the major third, again, is F sharp. Now, what's the root? Well, C is the minor seventh of D, because that's a whole step below D, and F sharp is the major third above D. So the root, we'll go ahead and put it up here, the root is D. Okay, so now D is 2. Okay, now you got your D, F sharp, D missing, F sharp, major third, A, you've got that in the treble, C is the minor seventh, so 2, it's a dominant, and it's a missing root, we'll put that up here, and then you've got the uppermost note of this D chord is the minor ninth. Okay, E flat is just a half step above the root D, so that's the minor ninth. Minor ninth, and that is E flat. Okay. Now, your lowermost note, always referring to D, the missing root, as the point of reference. Okay, your F sharp on the bottom is the major third on the bottom. Okay, now you got the minor ninth, which is fine. By the way, you call this X dominant. You could put the minor ninth right here on the designation. So then you got the major third, and then your major seventh is right here, which is your C. So the major seventh, C. So you get the major third and the major seventh are the characteristic intervals of this quadrad, seventh chord, ninth chord, minor ninth chord on D, the missing root. That's complex, but there you have it. Okay, the next chord, same thing. Okay, now, 2 goes to what? Well, 2 goes to 5. Well, that's your lowermost note, and it's dominant again, and it's got a missing root, so the root's on the bottom. Okay, now, you've got a E flat on the top. Now, is G the root here? Well, it should be, because we've got it designated as the dominant. It sure looks like it, because you've got a B in the treble clef. So you got the major third B, and where's your major seventh? You don't have one. So you're going to just simply have to assume that there would be, or should be, I don't know what you want to say, a minor seventh, but at least you have the major third. So it's without a doubt, but you got your major third, which is then the the characteristic interval of the dominant, but it's a 7th chord, so there's going to be a missing 7th chord there. So major third then is the B. And then the minor 7th on G would be an F. So F is the minor 7th, and we'll have to put a bracket here with that, somehow indicating that's missing. But we'll just simply have to assume it. There is a dominant without a root, and it's the minor 9th. No, it's not. Because G to E is a major 6th. G to E flat is a minor 6th. Now, we don't generally indicate a chord as being a dominant with a minor 6th. Take 6 up another octave and you run into the 13th. So it's a minor 13th. So you have a minor 13th here, which is the note E flat, which was the minor 9th of the previous chord. So now you have the minor 13th up here. E flat is the minor 9th, E flat's the minor 13th, and it's still E flat. These are things you've got to recognize, you've got to understand what's going on here. I hope you can see all this. I'll make sure you do. Okay. What do we have? I think that's about it for that. Now that 4th measure in that line is another complex chord. You've got the A flat in the bottom. Now you've got the F and the B. F in the bass clef up to B in the treble clef. That's a tritone. So F to B is a tritone. And F is the minor 7th. B is the major 3rd of B is the major 3rd of G. Well, that's your tonic. So this is again a dominant. Now wait a minute. No, wait a minute. It's a dominant. Major 3rd is B, so that's of the dominant. So we got another dominant here in a different form. Okay, F, it's a dominant with a missing root. And do we have a minor 9th here? We don't. Now, wait a minute, we do. A flat. A flat is the minor 9th. So, minor 9th. And the minor 9th is A flat. Flow, the lowermost note is the minor 9th. Amazing. Totally amazing. Your upper note of this G dominant missing root, G, B, D, is the 5th. And the 5th is, in this case, a D. Very complex, but you can write it out like this, and I expect that you write it out and do this. Either copy what I've done or go in and analyze it yourself as to what the chords are. Okay, now we've finished that really complex line. We go on the next line here, the next 4 measure, okay, which is another dominant. And this dominant will be, you got the minor 7th in the left hand, so it's dominant. Okay, and you've got G is the root. Then you got your minor 7th above that, which is F. Okay, because you don't have it indicated as the lower or the uppermost note. And what's the uppermost note? G, B, D is the 5th. And the major 3rd of this chord is B. So the major 3rd is B. And B to F, or F to B, is not a perfect interval or normal interval. F to B flat would be, but this is F to B, which is then an augmented fourth, which is your tritone. Okay, but that's not reflected in your uppermost note or your lowermost note, but internally. Hui, okay. That goes on. 5 goes to 1 in this particular case, because you've got that C, E, G, and G is the lowermost note. Okay, so and it's major, and the lowermost note is G, which is the 5th of the chord. The uppermost note of this chord is a major third, and it's this major third that characterizes it as a major triad, because you don't have a 7th in there. So it's a triad, not a quadrad. Okay, that's an easy one. That's number 2. Number 3 goes on to G again. 5. Okay, your bottom note is the root, and this is going to be a dominant, really, but it's the root, so that's G, of course. Okay, your uppermost note is a minor 7th. Now you don't have a major third, so the major third we can call missing. Put a little circle there maybe for missing. The major third is missing. What do you have? The 4th. And take the 4th up and you've got an 11th. So it's a dominant 11 chord with a missing major third. Unless you want to talk the bottom note as being a pedal point, but then you don't hear what's there. You've got to hear that C as being part of the harmony, not as a suspended note which will resolve. That kind of nonsense. I'm sorry. It does resolve, but this chord is an 11th chord. Period. End of story. Now, let's go on to the next chord, and it is another dominant. The uppermost note of this dominant, again, is the minor 7th. That it just stays. The lowermost note is the root. And you have the major third, which is B. Now that's not missing. That little symbol there will be missing. Or, well, it's not a tall nor, because we've got it listed. The C is the 11th. Where will we put that? C is the 11th. Put that in there somehow. Okay. Sorry if I'm not keeping this within the camera here. Okay. So minor 7th. Now you got the major third. Here is the 11th, unless you want to call it a pedal point, which I really object to. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the end of that line. Now, the 25th measure, the 29th measure, is another dominant. Or is it? I'm not so sure. I'm taking that for granted, aren't I? Okay, now what we have here on the top part is C to F sharp. Okay. Now, let's put this a little bit to the side here. C to F sharp is obviously an augmented fourth, which is your tritone. Now, C will be the minor 7th, and F sharp is the major third, and F sharp is the major third of D. So the root is D. That's the missing root. Well, then this is supertonic, because your missing root, D, is the point of reference for this function as a supertonic. Okay, now D to E flat in the left hand is a minor 9th. So the minor ninth is that E flat, which is found in the left hand. That's the minor ninth. Okay, but it's not on the lower part, so you simply have to indicate it. Now this is a dominant, but it's a missing root, and you got a minor ninth, so you can put it here as a minor ninth. Now, what's the lowermost note in this D? Well, that's G. D, E, F, G is the fourth. So this you could call the 11th as the lowest note. And the 11th is G. Unless you want to call it a pedal. That's up to you. Now, what's the uppermost note from D? Well, that's an easy one. That's the major third. Okay, and your minor seventh is the F sharp. So the minor seventh is F sharp. And those two create your tritone, which the dominant is built upon. Okay. Phew. Okay. Then we go on into basically just a CEG, tonic. It's major. The bottom note of this major chord is the fifth. That's G. And the upper note of this tonic is also G, the fifth. Again, G. So you got G doubling here as the uppermost and the lowermost note of this chord. You got E is the major third. Major third, which is the characteristic interval of this major triad. But the root is, if you want to put this in here, the root is C, the tonic. But the major third is the characteristic interval of this major triad. It's not a seventh chord because there's no seventh in here. Okay, then the next one is a dominant again. Now this is exactly the same thing. The situation is up here where we had that minor ninth. Where is it now? We got this G. Let's figure this out and then we'll compare it here. One moment. I think it might be this one here. Well, we got, it's an 11th chord. Well, let's work that out in a minute. Okay, you got F as the uppermost note. So F of the dominant is the minor seventh. F. And G is the root of this dominant. This is, by the way, 5. It's not put an identifier. Let's put a function here. Then the identifier is X. And it's not without a root because we got it. That's the G, the root. Okay. Now then, the C is the 11th. Theory books will call it a suspended note from the previous chord, but I want to know what that chord is right in and of itself. That's a C dominant 11th chord. So then the C is the 11th. So it's a C dominant 11. Okay, you got a minor seventh. You do have the major third, and the major third is not there. So the major third is missing. We'll put a little circle there. The major third is missing. Where did we have that? Up here somewhere I put it. Major third missing. I'm sure you can find it. Okay, so we got the major third missing here. It's the dot because we do have the minor seventh. Then finally we got the dominant again, and it's a garden variety dominant because there's no 11th. It's just plain dominant with the, you got the tritone B to the F, So F is the minor seventh, B is the major third. So the uppermost note is that minor seventh. And that minor seventh is F. And the major third is B. So B to F is your tritone. F is the uppermost note here. And you have the major third in here, and that major third is B. We've already indicated that up here. But your minor seventh major third is there. It's dominant. Now it's plain dominant, and the bottom note is your root. Well, that takes care of that. Now we're on the last measure, last line here. Okay, you're on tonic. As I said before, this is the one that confounds theorists. They don't know, or they don't have any idea what to do with it because it's on the tonic. Well, the uppermost note is an E, which is the major third, E. But you do have right below that the minor seventh, which then is the B flat. And the minor seventh and the major third is your tritone, which indicates a dominant. Now we have a dominant on the tonic. That's what theorists cannot accept. And I don't know why. It's crazy. But it's a dominant on the tonic. Your tonic is the basic root. It's the root of the tonic, which is C. So that's, what else can I say? It's dumb, but you got an identifier of the X, and that's what theorists don't have and that they don't want to use for some unexplained reason. Then you go into the next measure, which is a 4-chord FAC. A 4-chord FAC. C is your upper note. F, which is the root, is major, and the lowermost note is the fifth. Okay, nothing special there. It's major. So A is the major third, which is the identifying interval that makes the chord major. Is there a seventh in there? FAC? There isn't, so it's a triad. Then 4 goes up to 5. And 5, you got a seventh on top, the minor seventh. And you've got a major third, which is B. Major third, B. And the minor seventh and the major third is your tritone of the dominant. Okay. And what you're now, it's 5 and it's dominant. Now the only thing about this is you got the C in the bass. Well, you can regard it as a pedal point or regard it as the 11th on the bottom, because that chord has a particular harmony to it. So you can say the 11th's on the bottom. Didn't we have some other place where the 11th was on the bottom? I don't see it offhand. There it is. So the 11th here, over there, and the 11th here on the bottom. And it creates that particular harmony. And you've got to understand it as such. If you want to think also of it as being a pedal point, that's just a common tone all the way through. But that common tone in these particular two cases is the 11th of the chord, which makes its identity. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the tonic. And I don't think I have to explain that any further. I think we got it. Let's see if we do. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. I think we got it. Okay, that is another way to do the analysis of this prelude. And you've got to do this. You can either refer to my work or you can simply take it from the prelude itself and justify every single note, because Bach was a genius and he had a reason for every single note. He didn't do these things just, by chance or whatever. Of course, yeah, he sat down, he experimented, he improvised a little bit to get what he wanted. Then what he wanted, then he wrote that out. But this is a chord chart. This is a lead sheet, you might say, of what is there. Learn it, memorize it, work with it. Now your job is to practice it. Now, the practicing of this prelude is not difficult for the more advanced pianist. For the beginner who's only been at the piano maybe a year or two, this is tough. This may be beyond him. But if it's an intelligent beginner, this is very much of a learning experience, a very high-level learning experience, because Bach is a high-level composer. This is not simple little things of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star or something like that. So you've got to go through and you've got to play these things. You've got to name every single note as you play them, and it should be by memory. And you should be able to hear these things. And if you don't hear them as what they are, and then what kind of an identity that makes those chords, then you got, of course, the minor ninths, minor 13ths, and 11ths. Who would have thought that Bach would have written all those different color tones, shall we call them? Because this is why the jazz pianist studies Bach. Well, I think this is a long one. Go ahead and study it, work with it, and you've got to visualize also everything that you do. And eventually, when you've got this pretty much worked out and you work with it by the hour in some cases, or by the week or the month, but it's got to be learned. And when I say learned in this context, I mean memorized. Memory without understanding is nonsense. It's a parroting. But memorizing with learning is what it's all about. Then you've got to do this strictly without any just close your eyes and visualize everything. Visualization is one of the most important facets that you have at your disposal. And you probably never used it very much. So therefore you've got to work with it. You've got to see these notes. You've got to see them as parts of the chord that you're working with. You've got to see the key circle relationship of notes. You've got to see in your vision. And once you can play the entire composition in the dark, I think you pretty much learned the composition. But if you simply memorized it, you don't know anything. Duh. So I know this is a big assignment and a big thing that I'm asking, but it just puts you on a much higher level. I don't know the name of the pianist, but he was blind and one of the best pianists in the world at that particular time. I don't know, this wasn't too long ago. But he played a complete performance at Carnegie Hall, in the big hall, not the little small one, the big one, which everybody in New York attended because he was so incredible. Of course, he can't see with his eyes, but he had complete vision of everything he was doing. He never missed a note. No matter what kind of a jump it was, nothing. It was all done by visualizing internally rather than with his eyes. Please take this thing seriously, because when you do this with the Bach, everything else from now on becomes understandable. And we'll go on, and with this information, we will go on to works of Chopin, Debussy, and anybody, or in Beethoven, for example. My word, the Beethoven, what is it, Opus 20, I forget what it is. Anyway, it's the Moonlight, that first movement. It's complicated, just as this prelude here is complicated. Most people memorize it and have no idea what's there. They simply parrot it, you know, memorizing without any idea of what's there. Okay, enough. Carry on and we'll talk later. Bye-bye.